All right, so today we are going to do a deep dive into self-sabotage.
Oh, interesting.
And we've got some excerpts from Brianna Wiest's book, The Mountain Is You, to help us with this, plus some cool visuals of the book cover, too.
Awesome.
So, have you ever felt like you're kind of in your own way?
Hmm.
You know what you want, but something's holding you back.
Yeah.
That's self-sabotage.
Yeah.
And Wiest, in her book, it kind of talks about how it's not like this deep-seated self-hatred.
Right.
It's more like we're trying to protect ourselves, but in like a misguided way.
Okay.
And she has this really powerful metaphor of a mountain.
Okay.
Like, imagine the life you want is on the other side of this mountain.
Hmm.
But the mountain itself, that obstacle,
Mm.
is something that we've built inside ourselves.
Wow.
And then she also talks about this idea of an upper limit for happiness.
An upper limit.
Yeah, like we all have a comfort zone, even for good things,
I see.
and we subconsciously try and stay in it.
That's so interesting how we can be like drawn to what we want and then like put up these roadblocks to actually getting it.
Exactly.
And that's where unpacking these psychological patterns can be really helpful, I think.
Absolutely.
We're not just describing the problem, we're going to explore what you can actually do about it.
Yeah, and even just like the table of contents of this book, it's kind of like a guide.
Right.
Chapters like The Mountain Is You,
Yeah.
and your triggers are the guides to your freedom. It really feels like we're going on this journey.
Absolutely. And her core argument is that this self-sabotage often stems from things like unmet needs,
Right.
unprocessed emotions,
Yeah.
and like those old stories that we keep telling ourselves about who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not about blaming the past, but understanding how it's informing how you are today.
And she has such relatable examples. Like there's one about Carl Jung.
Okay.
And as a kid, he would actually faint at school.
Yeah.
And then later he realized that it was actually like his subconscious way of getting out of a place where he just felt unhappy.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's like we create these problems that are actually symptoms of something much deeper.
It makes you think back to like your own experiences.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever had something that just keeps happening over and over again?
Yeah,
And looking back, it's like, oh, that was maybe serving another purpose,
totally.
right?
And she gets into the different ways self-sabotage manifests, like resisting opportunities,
Yeah. Yeah.
striving for this unrealistic perfection, having these unhealthy habits that we just can't shake,
Yeah.
and even just surrounding yourself with the wrong people. That can be a form of self-sabotage.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing those patterns.
Yeah,
I think back to the upper limit idea. Imagine someone that's always sabotaging their success.
right.
It could be that success, even though on the surface it seems like what they want,
Yeah,
it feels too unfamiliar,
right.
too outside the norm. So it's like we have this thermostat for happiness, and sometimes unconsciously we're turning it down,
Wow, yeah.
even when good things are happening.
And I think that visual of the book cover really drives it home.
Oh, yeah.
It's a mountain, but there's like these flecks of gold in it.
I like that.
And to me, the gold represents like our potential and all the amazing things that we could do.
Right.
But there we are, this mountain standing in our own way.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great way to make it tangible.
That's what-
And the book doesn't just describe the problem.
Right.
It gives you tools to work with it, you know?
Mm.
She talks about identifying your subconscious commitments.
Okay.
And those are what you really want deep down, even if you're not fully aware of it.
So like a need for control could actually lead you to sabotage situations where you don't feel in control.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're trying to regain that sense of control, but in like a messed up way.
Exactly. And the book also helps you recognize the ways that you might be in denial about self-sabotage, blaming others,
Right.
focusing on your good intentions versus the actual outcome,
Yeah.
constantly justifying yourself. Those can all be signs that you're not fully owning your role in things.
And she has this line that I think is really powerful.
No, what a...
She says, your life is ultimately measured by your outcomes, not your intentions.
Ooh, I like that.
It's kind of like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Especially if you're serious about making changes.
Absolutely.
It's not just what you meant to do,
Oh.
it's what you actually did.
Exactly.
And that's where she says emotional intelligence comes in.
Ah, interesting.
It's the key to kind of break free, but what does that actually look like in practice?
So it's about understanding your emotions, not being ruled by them.
Okay.
Imagine, like, learning to tell the difference between your intuition, those gut feelings,
Right.
and those intrusive, fear-based thoughts
Okay.
that try to hold you back.
Got it. Yeah. So it's kind of like we have to learn how to like ride the waves of our emotions instead of getting like swept away.
Yeah. And it does take practice, but Wiest gives us some really great strategies in her book.
Okay.
One thing she emphasizes is the importance of disconnecting action from feeling. We're so used to waiting for, like, the right feeling.
Right.
You know?
Like motivation or inspiration or
And
whatever.
exactly, before we do anything.
Yeah. And how often does that actually work?
Right.
I know, like for me, waiting for those perfect conditions just makes me procrastinate more.
Exactly. And that's where self-sabotage thrives.
Right.
The book encourages us to recognize that we can do things even if we don't feel like it. You know?
It's like built in that mental muscle, I guess.
Exactly.
It's so hard, though.
It is.
It's like, I know what I should be doing logically, but then there's this resistance inside.
Right. And that internal resistance is often rooted in, those subconscious commitments
Right.
that we were talking about.
Like, for example.
Imagine someone who, like, deeply values feeling free.
Oh.
They might sabotage opportunities that could bring them more financial security.
Right.
But also more responsibility, more structure.
So on some level, that freedom is more important to them than the money, even if they don't realize it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And until we uncover those underlying commitments,
Yeah.
we're going to keep repeating those patterns.
So where do we even begin?
Right.
How do we uncover those things and actually change?
So the book mentions some specific patterns.
Okay.
And instead of just like listing them all, let's pick a few that might resonate with you.
Yeah, okay, let's do it.
And really dive in.
Okay. One that kind of jumps out to me is resistance.
Oh, whoa.
We all know that feeling of like dragging our feet.
Right.
Even when it's something that we want to do.
Think about it. Resistance is often our way of like testing the waters. Is this new project, this new relationship really worth the risk?
Okay.
Your subconscious is trying to protect you. Make sure you're not getting into something that could potentially hurt you.
So it's not always a bad thing.
Not necessarily. Sometimes resistance is a healthy pause.
Okay.
A chance to check in with yourself.
Right.
And make sure you're really aligned with the path ahead.
But how do we tell the difference between that like healthy pause
Right.
and the fear-based resistance?
Wiest suggests paying attention to the feeling itself.
Okay.
Is it like a gentle nudge? A sense of hesitation that invites further exploration?
Right.
Or is it a wall of anxiety, a feeling of dread that's telling you to run in the opposite direction?
Okay, so listen to those cues.
Exactly.
What about hitting your upper limit?
Yes.
I'm fascinated by that we even have a limit for happiness.
Remember that thermostat analogy?
Right.
It's like we each have a set point for how much happiness we allow ourselves to experience.
Right, and then when we start to go past that, our subconscious is like, nope, got to bring you back down. And it's often driven by fear.
Yeah, a fear of the unknown. Success, while appealing, can also feel intimidating.
Right.
It might take us out of our comfort zone, challenge our identities,
Yeah.
even threaten our relationships with people that aren't as supportive.
So it's not just about wanting to be happy, it's also about feeling safe and familiar.
Absolutely.
And sometimes those two things are in conflict.
Exactly. And that's where the work of self-awareness comes in.
Right.
Recognizing those patterns, understanding those underlying fears,
What,
and developing strategies to navigate them.
what about uprooting?
Okay.
Like that constant need for a new start, new relationships, new environment.
Yes, think about it. How easy is it to distract ourselves with the next shiny object?
Oh, it's so easy.
Right.
Yeah.
The next job, the next city, the next relationship.
Right. It's tempting to think that if we just change our external circumstances, everything will fall into place.
Exactly.
But it's like that saying, like, wherever you go, there you are.
You can't outrun your problems just by moving.
And what Wiest highlights is that this uprooting behavior can actually be a way to avoid confronting those deeper emotional issues.
Cool.
The fear of commitment, the discomfort with conflict, the uncertainty of figuring out what you truly want.
Right.
It's easier to just keep moving than to face those things head on.
So it's not really about the new city, the new job, the new partner. It's about what those things represent.
Exactly.
Like a fresh start.
Yeah.
A temporary escape.
Precisely. And as tempting as it can be to keep running, the book emphasizes the importance of learning to stay put.
Yeah.
building something meaningful,
Right.
developing deep connections, confronting those uncomfortable emotions,
Yeah.
that's where the real growth happens.
It's about facing the music and realizing that the real journey is inward, not outward.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest obstacles to that inward journey, to really facing ourselves, is perfectionism.
Now, this one is tricky because we're often told that, like, striving for excellence is a good thing. It is, but Wiest makes a clear distinction between healthy striving and that crippling kind of perfectionism
Okay.
that keeps us paralyzed by fear.
Right.
It's not about doing our best, it's about avoiding the vulnerability of making mistakes, of being seen as anything less than perfect.
So it's not about the quality of the work, it's about the fear behind it.
Exactly.
The fear of failure, the fear of judgment.
Exactly. And ironically, this fear of failure can actually lead to, well, failure.
Right.
Because if we're so terrified of making mistakes, we end up avoiding the very actions that would lead to growth and mastery.
Yeah, we're so focused on getting it right that we never actually get it done.
Exactly. Wiest encourages a shift in focus.
Okay.
From perfection to progress. From getting it right to simply getting it started.
Oh.
From there, we can iterate, we can improve, we can refine, but we have to start somewhere.
Right.
Even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect.
It's about embracing the journey, not just the destination, and recognizing that mistakes are not failures. They're opportunities for learning.
And growth.
And growth.
Yeah.
It's about giving ourselves permission to be human,
Right.
to be imperfect,
Yeah.
to be a work in progress.
I love that.
And I think that's a really liberating message, especially when it comes to overcoming self-sabotage.
It is, because a lot of it comes from that feeling of not being good enough.
Right.
You know, not measuring up.
And when we can let go of that need for perfection,
Right.
we open ourselves up to like a whole new level of freedom and possibility.
Yeah. And this makes me think about another pattern from the book.
Okay.
Limited emotional processing skills.
Yes.
It's not just about feeling our feelings.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
about understanding what they're trying to tell us.
Exactly. Think of your emotions as messengers, each one carrying valuable information about your needs, your values, your boundaries.
Right.
But if you don't have the skills to, like, decipher those messages, you end up reacting rather than responding.
So you get swept away by the intensity of the feeling,
Right.
rather than understanding the wisdom it holds.
That's where those unhealthy coping mechanisms come in.
Right.
Like the overeating, the procrastinating,
Yes.
you know, the endless scrolling.
It's all like ways of numbing ourselves
Right.
to those uncomfortable emotions.
But they only provide temporary relief.
Exactly. And those coping mechanisms, while they might provide temporary relief,
Right.
they're actually keeping us stuck.
Right.
They're preventing us from processing those emotions, from learning from them,
Okay.
from integrating them into our wholeness.
So it's not about judging ourselves for having them.
Right.
It's about recognizing that they're serving a purpose
Exactly.
and then finding healthier ways to kind of meet those needs.
Absolutely. And Wiest provides some really practical strategies
Right.
for developing those emotional processing skills.
Like,
Things like journaling, meditation,
mhm.
even just talking to a trusted friend or a therapist.
It's about creating a safe space to explore those emotions
Exactly.
and then understand them and release them.
And remember, this is an ongoing process.
Right.
It's not about achieving some like perfect state of emotional mastery.
Right.
It's about showing up for yourself with compassion and curiosity,
Yeah.
even when those emotions feel overwhelming.
Be the loving observer
Exactly.
of your own experience.
And as you start to develop those emotional processing skills, you'll notice that you're less reactive, more resilient,
Okay.
better equipped to handle those inevitable ups and downs of life.
Like you're building emotional muscle.
Exactly.
And that will help with the self-sabotage too.
Absolutely. Speaking of patterns, there's one more I want to highlight.
Okay.
Attachment to what we don't really want.
Mm-hmm.
This one can be like a bit of a heartbreaker because sometimes the dreams we're chasing
Yeah.
aren't actually our own.
They're like borrowed dreams.
Yeah.
You know, from family, from our culture, even from like a younger version of ourselves that didn't know any better.
Exactly. And so we find ourselves like striving and pushing and hustling
Right.
towards a goal that feels more like an obligation than a genuine desire.
It's so hard.
It is. We're like swimming upstream,
Yeah.
fighting against the current of our own authentic selves.
It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly. You can force it,
Yeah.
but it's never going to feel quite Right.
And that's where the courage to let go comes in.
Yes, to surrender those outdated dreams,
Right.
to release those expectations that no longer serve you,
Yeah.
and to embrace the uncertainty of discovering what truly resonates with your soul.
It's about giving yourself permission to, like, evolve, to change,
Absolutely.
to redefine success on your own terms.
It's about trusting that the universe has a plan for you, even if you can't see it yet.
Hmm.
And when you're willing to let go of what's no longer serving you,
Right.
you create space for something new, something more aligned with your authentic self to emerge.
Like decluttering, to make space for the treasures.
And sometimes the greatest treasure of all is the realization that you are enough, just as you are.
Wow.
You don't need to achieve anything,
Right.
acquire anything,
Yeah.
or prove anything to be worthy of love, joy, and fulfillment.
That's a powerful message.
It is, and it's a message that I hope will stay with you long after this deep dive is over.
So we've explored a lot today, like those self-sabotaging patterns, those subconscious commitments.
Yes.
We've talked about emotional intelligence, disconnecting action from feeling,
Right.
having that courage to let go of what's not serving us.
And through it all, we've been guided by the insights of Brianna Wiest's The Mountain Is You.
Such a good book.
It's a book that I highly recommend to anyone who's ready to take a deep dive into those patterns of self-sabotage
Right. Yeah.
and emerge on the other side.
Yeah.
Stronger, wiser,
More aligned
and more aligned.
with their true potential.
Exactly. It's a journey of self-discovery,
Yeah.
self-acceptance,
Totally.
and self-empowerment.
Yeah. And remember, you're not alone in this journey.
We all have our own mountains to climb,
We do.
our own patterns to overcome.
Right.
But with the right tools, the right mindset, and the right support,
Right.
you can summit those mountains and create a life that's truly extraordinary.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
What if those patterns of self-sabotage, those habits of behaviors that have been holding you back, are actually trying to guide you, to point you in the direction of your greatest potential?
Interesting.
They're not your enemies, but actually your teachers,
I like that.
your allies on this journey of becoming who you were meant to be.
It's about shifting our perspective,
I'll leave it.
reframing those negative experiences
Yeah.
as valuable lessons,
Okay.
and trusting that even in the midst of those challenges, there's a deeper wisdom at play, guiding us towards our highest good.
That's a great way to look at it.
It is.
All right. I think we reached the summit of our deep dive.
We did.
Huge thanks to Brianna Wiest for her awesome book, The Mountain Is You, for guiding us on this journey.
Yes.
And all you deep divers out there, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep climbing those mountains.
Yes.
Until next time.